I believe we can start today's demo because it's 6 p.m. and it's the usual time for starting MSI weekly demo. Today we have a bunch of stories and we have a bunch of updates to show you. As during this week we have a contribution week in a tech division office, and where we work with the guys from tech division on MSI backlog. That's why we have quite a lot of updates to show you. Mark joined. So
yes, hello.
Cool. Okay, so let's follow the agenda which I shared several minutes ago in our chat. Yaroslav, are you on a call?
Yeah, sure. Hello.
Okay, so you can share your screen and make a presentation of the story you implemented in the scope of the contribution week.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the stories was regarding the Backorders functionality. So now we have the Backorders functionality in the basic Magento logic, and yeah, it's a good idea to have it in the multi-source inventory as well. And in order to achieve that, we had to cover a few, to be more precise, 2 entry points that we have already in the MSI framework. So we have interface for getting product quantity, and we have an interface for checking that the product is in stock. So actually we have reviewed the current Backorder functionality in Magento, and to be sure about the best way to implement it in our multi-source inventory. And we decided that we don't need to change much, and we can follow the standard logic to have our solution as more transparent as possible. And for this purpose, we have created a plugin for the checking that the product is in stock. So the plugin looks the following way. And yeah, so we are checking that Backorder's functionality is enabled. Currently, we check this point in the standard stock item database table, but in the future, we will rewrite this logic for our multi-stock inventory configuration. And if we have the Backorder's functionality enabled, we always return true when some other logic requests if the product is in stock. And to ensure that the logic is working fine, since we don't have a UI at the moment, we have covered the functionality by the integration test that checks the product will be always in stock if the Backorders is enabled in Magento configuration. And we also check that when the Backorders functionality is disabled, the product will be out of stock on checking the interface. And as for the drop shipping functionality, we had small discussion regarding that, and we have decided that the dropshipping functionality is quite similar to the Backorders functionality, because when you use dropshipping, you don't need usually to manage stock, and you can just enable the Backorders, and in that way you will always have a possibility to have like infinite numbers of items in your store and use the dropshipping based on this logic. And maybe Valero will provide more information regarding the dropshipping idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaroslav. So I will provide a little bit more information regarding the dropshipping. Yeah. So as Yaroslav already mentioned, we consider that we can achieve the dropshipping functionality with whether with the source configuration or with the Backorder configuration. For example, merchant who would like to use the dropshipping will just allocate a dedicated source for these purposes and fill it up with the source items. And after that, for example, if he doesn't care about the quantity of the items in the dropshipper stock. He will just switch on the backorder for this source, and in a case if he cares about the source item quantity for the product in a dropshipper storage, he will just manage this source as any other usual source in a system, and probably will proceed with the import-export logic to this source. So actually, like, the achieving the drop shipping logic is just a point of customization and the customization of Magenta functionality which goes out of the box. That's why we consider that we can close both stories, backorder functionality and the dropshipping functionality. And one more thing to mention, that because as Yaroslav told that we don't have the UI, actually the UI we already have in the scope of backorder configuration. So we will just reuse the UI we had before, and we are providing additional logic under the hood of that UI. So backorder configuration which we had in a system with the possibility to override that configuration on a product level still exists, and it will support the MSI functionality now. So that's how we suppose the backorder will work. Mark, do you have any particular question regarding the backorder or dropshipping functionality?
No, on this one I don't, just because we had a call on it, so I think we addressed things there.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So the next in our agenda is Lars, who will describe you some improvement in the validation functionality. So Lars, feel free to share your screen.
Yeah, wait a second, please. So I worked on I moved the validation of carrier code to the service layer, because before the story we had only a validation at the controller entry point, and if you go over the API or some different service, it does not validate is the carrier code really existing. And I moved this validation from the controller to another carrier link validator, and write many test cases for it here. With some examples, okay, we have some global configuration for it, and which errors we are expecting, and we have a carrier code doesn't exist, and yeah, it was a small story. Most time I support Vadim with import export. Yeah, next time more about it. Okay.
So the benefit of the story presented by Lars was that for now we have the only point of customization, and we don't have a duplication logic of validation in a constructor, in a controller logic, and in a service layer. So all the validation logic now happens on the service layer. So we just removed a little bit of the boilerplate code and the copy paste we had in the system. Okay, so according to the agenda, the next presenter would be the next presentation would be regarding the sales channel to the stock assignment UI. And yeah, I'm muting. Philip, you can share your screen.
So, oops, das war wandern, share the screen. I mean, my stuff was pretty basic, to be honest. We added the stock interface and the parts of making sales channel even available. So we make functionality to provide every website in first place. Order group is the setup for the next step. And I also expanded the grid behind the whole stuff with output, which is showing us the sales channel that are currently on this specific element, in this case just the default stock. And my colleagues next to me, Belinda and Reini, make parts of the API and inclusion. Yeah, so currently this whole topic is still work in progress because the data inside there are just dummy data, and we are now connecting these stuff together so that the API and the UI are working together. So basically that's it.
Yeah, summarizing that presentation of the UI, I just want to add several words regarding this story in the scope of which this work was done. So actually, this pretty big part of the functionality where we provide an interfaces and the implementation which is supposed to make an assignment for the sales channel and the stocks, because currently we had just a stock logic, and now we are making the integration with the sales channel we have in Magenta. So on the presentation which was just given, there is a sales channel like Magenta websites, but potentially we introducing an extension point to use another sales channel kind, for example, like customer group or something like that, maybe a store view, but out of the box in the MVP implementation of multi-source inventory, we're going to deliver just the only entity responsible for the sales channel, Magenta website. That's why actually on the presentation we showed the list of the Magenta website and how this website could be assigned to the stocks. So it's not yet fully finished, but because we did not merge two different tasks like APIs and the implementation and the UI. So just the UI part was presented. Mark, if you have any particular question or requirements how this UI could be implemented, or whether you would like to change the look and feel of this particular implementation, because we have both form and grid changes. Feel free to provide your feedback and we can fix it pretty quickly.
Okay, sure, I will do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next in our agenda, Vadim, who will show you the export functionality for the source items. So the exporting inventory functionality. Vadim, feel free to share your screen.
Ich kann meins um.
All right. So I was working on import-export together with Lars. We started it already on the last hackathon in Munich, and now we finished this topic so far. After the review would be completed, we can close this topic. So the last part was the export. I show you the functionality. So we choose the source entity type for export. In our pretty small grid, we can see like other export entities, some filtering opportunities. First, we can make a download of the whole information here. As you can see, I just have 3 source IDs and 2 SKUs in my database. We can filtering by a sample SKU. This is a like condition beside, so we now just get the test SKU. We can also add filtering for source IDs, for example, 1 to 2. Now we see just a few of them. Also exclude fields. So no status anymore here. And also, of course, combining these filters. For example, we need here 5 and just 2. Yeah. So as we see, everything works so far. Of course, there is an error if we have a combination which don't provide us any data. And I think also a quite more useful case is here to say we just want to export one specific source and only provide information which quantity we have, which is, for example, in stock, but we don't need the source information and the stock information in our CSV file. So we see here the result. So that's it so far.
Thank you, Vadim. Very good. Mark, do you have any question? Do you have any particular question regarding the export inventory functionality?
Yeah, no, I think it looks very good. It's in many ways similar to how we're doing all the other exports. I only wonder if we would consider using source name as a way to do that as well. It's a fairly technical user that will do the export, so they have the ability to go get the source ID from the sources grid before they do that. But it may be more user-friendly if they have the ability to filter by name.
So in our export file, we will still export source IDs, but your request to add the source name to the grid where we provide the filtering?
Yes.
Okay, I believe we can proceed with that.
Yeah, no, I understand in the export file itself, the name will be present. But it's just if I don't know the ID of a source, then I can't complete the export on this screen. I have to leave the screen, go back to the sources grid, find the IDs I want, and return.
Mm-hmm. Vadim?
Yes, you hear me? Yeah. I think the one problem we have is that the name is not input for us, so maybe we have the same names for several sources.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it. So only, okay, so we don't have a unique constraint on the source name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that's the case, we have to stay with ID. So in that case, the current implementation is great.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So going next to the agenda, we have a presentation for the low stock report, basic concept for the MSI. And you can share. Probably you can use my mic, so we are pretty close.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gone. No?
Yeah, we see your screen.
Okay. So at Wednesday we want to start with the dropshipping feature, but then we decide to wait until we have further information. Now it seems that this feature can be mapped with other features, so we don't need it don't need to implement it anymore. So I started with the inventory configuration. The first thing I want to do is the configuration for the low quantity notification. The things are done right now. Our database table is created, and we have a byte and a read logic. Yeah, and the basic interfaces. So I don't know what to say. That's
yeah. So actually, here we provide new functionality. So we will provide the low stock notification per source level. So, for example, if you have the Germany stock, and that stock includes several warehouses in Munich, Berlin, and Hamburg, for example, you will Magento will support low stock notification per each physical location. So if the products will run out, for example, in Munich stock, you will get a dedicated notification about that. So you can manage your inventory, and you manage inventory on a source basis. And this is pretty important functionality, especially for the drop shipping, because as we agreed with Mark on yesterday's call, it's a must to have for the drop shipping to have a notification on a source level, because some merchant will use that notification to send the data to the drop shipper to fulfill the order. We don't have a lot of functionality yet, so we currently we introduce the interfaces and made some changes in the new module. I believe the most stuff to be presented would be implemented at the end of this week, so it's going to be presented on the next weekly MSI Demo. Okay, so now we have Vitaly, who will show us the multidimensional indexes and how we support updating the index, for example, for such business action like disabling of the source or changing assignment between the source and the stock. Vitaly, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, feel free to share your screen.
Thank you. Hello all. Yes, today I show you two additional indexers. It's source and stock item. Or source item, I rename one indexer that we have previously to source item and add additional stock item indexer. Okay. I have for the test one stock, Europe, and three sources, Italy, Ukraine, and French. French now is disabled. And I have one product that have assigned these sources. The first step, I try to enable source French. 1 second. Save. But now I have not a link for Europe stock from this French source. And if I run reindex for sources indexers, I not need to show recalculation this data because French source don't have a link to Europe stock. 1 second. I show indexer name. And check my indexer data and not change it, this quantity for one. I can disable this source and try to assign sources French to stock, Europe stock. Click Save. But after this, French source have disabled status, and if I run reindexation for inventory stock item, because I was changed link between source entity and stock entity, and I need to reindex stock item indexer. 1 second. And if I now run this, reindex this indexer, I have not change in the data, because French source now is disabled. If I enable this source and reindex source indexer, I will get a new data in this indexer. It's now it must be additional quantity for this product in French source. And after this, I can unassign this French source from Europe stock and click Save. Run after this index for stock item, and have data that was I have previously without French source. And but it's not a final decision. The next step will be create one composite indexer for these three that will manage all this process. But in an admin panel, we will have only one indexer for more useful. I think it's all. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you, Vitaly. Mark, maybe you have any question regarding this functionality?
No, and so it looked like from the demo, this indexer can be from the command line called separately from all the other indexes if necessary.
The current implementation now that we have like three separate indexes, and each of that indexes support invalidation of some particular table. For example, we have dedicated index for updating source items, so the amount of products on some particular physical storage. Another index we have just for tracking whether the source been enabled or disabled. And we have the third index, which is responsible for the observing the source to stock assignment, because currently that's how actually materialized view implementation made in Magento 2. That's why we need to have three different indexes for observing three different tables. But actually what we want to do, as Vitaly mentioned, we would like to introduce a composed index, which will compose all of that functionality, so we would not overcomplicate the usability. So there would be the only CLI command for that, and there would be the only line in the index grid in the admin panel.
Okay, so from the command line, then all three, if I issue a reindex command, I have the option to reindex all three of those at once.
Currently, or in a ideal behavior, which will we end up with after the next sprint?
Yes, that one. So in the end state.
So in the end of state, we actually will have a composed index, but under the hood of that composed index, we will have these three indexes, which Vitaly just showed you, and that indexes would be, so there would be like dependency, one indexes on another one. So we already have that functionality in Magento 2 when one index is dependent on another one. So we will track what kind of that index should be run. So we will track whether we need to run the full reindex because and like update the full dimension, or we are good enough to just update several source items in a particular table.
Okay, that makes sense, and I'm fine with that. If we have it as a single index name to reference in the command, I think that's easier for merchants.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, maybe you have any other question regarding other stories, or just mainly?
No, I don't think so for now, but it's really amazing to see so much that we've accomplished this week in the demo. It's really, really exciting.
Cool, thank you. It's really nice to hear that. Okay, if so, guys, feel free to ping us in a MSI Slack channel, and like the contribution week is still continues, so we are going to be to work tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, so on Sunday and Saturday. So feel free to join, at least remotely. Yeah, and thank you for all attendees for this demo. It was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.